Hi everyone, I am here with Gita. I had the most fortunate opportunity to meet her at the Sri Swami Satchidananda Ashram, also known as Yogaville. She does Shivji pujas there at the Nataraja shrine. I feel very blessed that I got connected with Gita and through the community there. She also does some amazing work with women and girls who are in the red light district in Calcutta in India, which is known for being the biggest area in the world where prostitution occurs as well as sexual trafficking. So I am very honored and excited to hear about her work with the girls there. So tell me actually how you got first involved in the ashram.
I moved here just about 4 years ago, but started coming probably in 2005. I became a yoga teacher in 2001, 2002, after having fallen very ill with Lyme disease. I found that one of the only things that helped me at all was yoga. So I was so inspired I became a yoga teacher. And after that teacher training, I had found Yoga for the Special Child, which is a training that was pioneered by Swami, working with children with special needs. And so I essentially stalked her for about 5-6 years, hoping to do her training. And I finally got to go. And it connected me to integral yoga, to Swami Satchidananda, to Yogaville, because she had been a devotee for many, many years of Sri Gurudev. And I learned so much from her. That's where I got to be exposed to and find my love of chanting, chanting kirtan, chanting Sanskrit mantra, which brought me to this path of bhakti, this path of yoga of the heart, which really changed my life completely. So I started visiting when I got connected with Sonia Sumar, and instead of just doing a week with her like I had planned, I studied several years with her and decided to then connect myself to this lineage, and I took initiation into this lineage and became a part of it. And eventually, when life changed and a husband left, I moved here to the ashram with my children because we'd always come here a lot. I had already been a part of it in many ways. We only had lived 3 hours away, so it was easy to get here for a weekend. And so we've been here for almost 4 years, and just bought a house here, and I love being a part of the community in many different ways. I've been blessed to work here, to serve here, to be a part of the community here in various ways. So it's been lovely to be here.
Did you learn how to do the pujas in Yogaville?
No, I did not actually. One of my second trip to India, I was literally wandering around looking for Shiva, my beloved Shiva. And on a map, I found a place called Omkareshwar, where it was on the Narmada River, which is a sacred Shiva river. And Omkareshwar had one of the Jyotirlingas, which is a sacred stone devoted to Shiva, one of the 12 very special stones dedicated to Shiva. And so I randomly picked this place on a map and ended up at an ashram there dedicated to Anandamayi Ma, a beautiful saint. And I met this amazing Swamiji, Swami Guru Sharananda, and upon seeing him, I knew I had known him for lifetimes. It was amazing. I stood there with my tea and my mouth wide open for an hour. And in my mind, I was trying to figure out where I had met him, but I knew I had never met him. He'd never been to the United States. He wasn't online, but I knew him. And it became very clear that we have gone back several lifetimes. And he and I started working together. I started being an assistant, writing books with him. And he taught me puja because I had been to India and I had attended a fire puja, homa, or havan, and I was mesmerized, completely mesmerized. I felt so clear and so energized and so alive, and my heart opened after just attending one. And I came home and I built one in my backyard, which is so not supposed to happen. And when he took his first trip to the U.S., not long after that, on tour, he came to stay with me and teach it at my space, and he found the havan in my backyard.
Wow.
And so he taught me. He taught me to be essentially a Hindu priest,
Wow.
because I had also assisted him on many during the tour and had been learning just by attending several, and he taught me how to do it. So from then on, for 3 years, in my backyard every Saturday, I would perform this fire puja, this fire ceremony. Rain, snow, my water freezing in the middle of the ceremony, and it became a beautiful dedication and a beautiful practice. And so when I came here and I saw that there was a Pujari, a priest needed here in a very traditional Vedic way, because at this temple is a very Vedic, old style puja, I said, can I help you? Because the man who's been taking care of it for 27 years had lost his voice. His back was going out. He couldn't lift the lingam, which is part of the ceremony. I said, I've been trained in puja. I've been doing puja for 3 years. Slightly different, but so much the same. So then I worked with him and eventually became the caretaker of the temple here at Yogaville. So I've been a Pujari for over 6 years now, which I'm not supposed to be. I'm a white woman, not, Brahmin born and all of that. But
no, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. No, really. As long as you studied it, it doesn't matter. To me, if you follow the Vedic philosophy, the Hindu philosophy, you studied it, you are Hindu, your ethnicity doesn't matter. That's my belief.
Yeah. And when the
Indians come different from me, who grew up in this, just because of, that you're white.
And I deal with that a lot with kirtan, with puja, and all this, being careful I'm not culturally appropriating. But then I get a lot of Indians that are so appreciative, and it's brought me to ease, because they see my heart and they see the pure intention, and they see me very much honoring the traditions in the way that they should be. And so I'm just glad that I can provide that in places where it seems like it's not offered. So it's a blessing.
And I'm a big Shivji worshiper too. So I'm like extra excited when I've seen you perform the pujas.
Yeah.
And of course the shrine there is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so beautiful when it revolves around too, and Shivji can see all of the mountains in the distance. But it's a place that I think, if you can, people should definitely go and visit. I'm really curious to know how you got involved with girls in India.
Yeah.
In Calcutta.
Yeah, my youngest daughter was about 2. And I've always been someone who's been very service-oriented. When I was a young child, under 10, I was already admiring Mother Teresa and Gandhi and Martin Luther King. I was an odd child because I didn't get that from my parents. It wasn't something in my home. It was just, bodhisattva or whatever, coming back to serve. And so when she was 2, I felt a yearning to serve more again. I wanted to do something bigger. And I had been talking to a lady about going to Haiti, because Haiti had the destruction down there, and she was taking yoga down there to the children. And I just happened to go onto a website called Off the Mat Into the World, led by Sean Korn, Hala, and Suzanne. They show that yoga is not just on the mat, but it's service, it's seva. And every year they pick a different organization, a different country, a different cause. And I had just watched a movie, The Women of Yoga, I believe it is, and they had been featured. And I had said, oh, that's amazing, the work they're doing. And I could never do that. So whenever I say the word never, the universe takes it as a challenge every single time. I've been very careful with that word. And I just happened to go over to their website, and I think it was that exact day they announced what they called their Save a Challenge for that year. And it was the girls in Kolkata. It was working with girls and women rescued from sex trafficking in India. And I'd always wanted to go to India, and I'd always wanted to go to India. And I knew the time would call when there was no forcing it. And funny enough, that year I had 3 opportunities to go to India. So I knew it was the time. And I had just been homeschooling homeschooled my girls. And just the week before, we were doing a book that had slavery in it. And one of the girls asked me, oh, well, we don't have slaves anymore, do we? And my initial reaction was like, no. But then I stopped and thought, I said, oh my gosh, yes we do. This world is still not free of slavery. And so it was that magical moment where everything came together, and I decided to join this challenge, the Save a Challenge, Global Save a Challenge, where it challenges you to raise $20,000 for that cause in a year. So in DC, $20,000 is a drop in a bucket for many people, but being a social worker and a yoga teacher, I had never made $20,000 in my life yet, and a stay-at-home mom. So that was like a really big deal. And that was the year I was opening my studio space, which is more of a temple for my yoga space. And so I donated all my money that year to this cause. Wow. And I started Kirtan that year, offering the chanting. And I offered all that money, and I created this big Kirtan festival that brought together all the Kirtan leaders in the D.C. area and raised money that way, which became a tradition too. And I was one of the first people to raise the $20,000 that year. I was so motivated. That was the year I also found out, very beginning, that what I've been suffering with for 12 years was Lyme disease. I had gone undiagnosed. I had been just kind of thrown in a bucket, being told it was in my head or fibromyalgia, and had suffered in so many ways. And I finally got an answer.
You had never taken a Lyme disease test?
No, it wasn't on the radar, and definitely not in Ohio at that time. So they had never thought to give me that in, 2000 in Ohio.
And you were suffering from then body aches and migraines from that?
Oh, I was so bad. I had stuttering and shaking and migraines 5 days a week, and sleeping 17 hours a day, and pain all day, every moment of my day. Really, it wasn't until last year that I woke up for the first time and wasn't in complete pain in 19 years. So I've been slowly healing myself. So that year, I joined the Save a Challenge while I'm opening a studio and battling Lyme disease and homeschooling my kids. Just bought a house. I was a little crazy, and I even said to my husband at the time, maybe I shouldn't do this, and he said, of course you should. So I did. When I raised the money, and if you do raise the money, you make the $20,000 goal, you're then invited to go on the trip to visit the organizations the money is going to go to. So I went with a group of almost all women, almost yoga teachers, and we visited the organizations that we raised the money for, which that year was the biggest year, the biggest fundraising they'd ever had, and it was $1 million collectively. It was amazing. So I went there and I visited 3 rescue homes, and I was just in awe. I was in awe of the resiliency. I was in awe of you know, these stories that none of us could ever imagine surviving and living through, and yet these girls still wanted human interaction. They still wanted touch. They still wanted love. And they had been through things I couldn't even imagine surviving and going through. And I saw hope. I was the weird one in the group. You know, we'd process every night, and a lot of people were feeling anger and sadness and resentment and frustration. And I kept seeing hope. And I really went there wanting to continue with the work and knowing that I wanted to continue to fundraise, because this organization is great at not just dumping money and running, but helping set up sustainable, ongoing things for the future. So sometimes people in one of the challenges, each of the challenges will then continue on raising money and being involved, and I had intentions of doing that. So at one of the rescue homes, an amazing, amazing woman named Aloka, 72 years old, little Indian lady with her British accent, her hair done in a bun, wearing her pearls and her beautiful saris. But she has done so much for hundreds and hundreds of women, and like me, grew up just really wanting to serve and help others. And we were kindred souls right away. And the group of us being yoga teachers, and we were visiting with her, two of her rescue homes. We were offering yoga every day. She saw how beneficial it was for the girls, and she knew because she'd been doing yoga her whole life. And she said, oh, I really, really wish these girls could have yoga like this all the time. I raised my hand. I said, how much does that cost? And she said a ridiculously cheap amount, I mean less than $5,000 a year. And I said, I will do that. I will commit to that. And so I did, and I went home and I started fundraising again and had another, kirtan festival. And since then, every kirtan that I've done, so every time I sing, my Sanskrit mantras, it's a call and response, kind of yoga song. Every single time that I sing in kirtan, that money always goes over to India. So I keep none of it. No gas money, no food money, nothing. Everything that goes into the basket always goes to that. And I have gone back and visited a few times and seen the girls and seen what they're, seen them grow and blossom. And it's just, and they remember you. It's so beautiful. And
this organization, then, they basically set up like a program. What's the name of this organization?
I work with a nonprofit in the U.S. that helps get the money there that set up this program to begin with, which is the Village Cooperative, or the Village Experience, based out of Indianapolis. And she has worked to create these sustainable programs in several places around the world, including India and Africa. And so I work with Kelly Campbell there. And then we work with Aloka Mitra in India and her organization, Women's Link International. And she has several rescue homes, and then also after care programs. So in the red light district, not all the kids can be rescued, or the boys. There aren't necessarily homes for the boys. So to get them into safety, there's after school care programs where they'll go from school to this program where they'll get a snack, they'll get dinner, they'll get games, they'll get help with their homework. Some are even overnight. And then they go, back to school the next day. It keeps them out of the house because mom's working at night. Mm-hmm. Or it's in the area where many women are working, and to keep the children safe for as long as possible, they have these places to go. And some of the money I've raised has gone and helped bring the yoga program to 5 of those after-school care programs, too.
Wow.
Yeah. which I visited, and it's something to walk in the middle of Kolkata. It's dark in a red light district. I mean, I went straight into India.
Well, how does it work with those people who are trafficked? Since they are under control, how do they escape, and then how do they get connected with the program?
It is a huge effort to work with that had taken many years to put together collaboration with the police, really a lot of the prostitutes themselves have worked together to help keep the kids out of the red light district. And also with organizations that actually go in and do the rescues. So there are oftentimes groups that will work with former children that were living or working in the red light district to know where the kids are hidden. Some of them are just offered up by moms so that they can stay safe, that their mom knows that they have a safe place and a brighter future. Depends on the home, depends on the area. I've worked with organizations that have both models. And then what happens is not only are they safe, they get an education. If they're younger, if they're a little bit older, they're given skills. So they're given skills so that they can then go out into the world when they get old enough and be able to support themselves with these skills, whether it be sewing or cooking or yoga teaching or block printing or jewelry making. There's a beautiful jewelry program associated with some of these programs. And that way these girls and these young women then go out there and they can take care of themselves. So, and they're always part of the family. They always stay part of the family. Aloka is going to keep an eye on them forever.
So this organization, Village Cooperative, you said, based out of Indianapolis, the programs they have set up there in Calcutta, they are helping also with rescue efforts?
They work with the organization in India.
They work with the organization that helps.
Yeah, right. So they brought a lot of money and support and education about this program. Aloka's been doing it for many, many years before we came over and helped.
And then the girls have a place to stay also?
Yeah, at the rescue center, there are, when they move there, they're there. They live there. That's where they stay. And then there's some of the after school care programs that are not a living arrangement. But these rescue homes, this is where they live. They oftentimes only see mom once a year if they have mom. If kids are rescued from situations where they have been in prostitution, and they, sometimes there's a bunch of children from Bangladesh, which is right nearby, or Thailand, or Nepal. They will work to repatriate these girls back to their homes if they find out that their homes were not the ones who sold them in the first place, because that is sometimes the case. But often it's a relative or a friend who says they're going to find a marriage for the daughter, and the family's poor and they need the money, and so they trust somebody, and then that somebody sells them into prostitution.
Okay.
Whether they marry them and then use them as their own personal work, or they sell them off to somebody else.
And then that's how they get into that whole cycle. Well, what were you saying about how they come back into the family?
If the family wasn't knowingly selling their child to prostitution, they will work to get them back if it was a situation from another country. And that took a lot of work because Bangladesh and India aren't the best of friends. So at one point, one of the rescue organizations I was working with, I mean, essentially they would get a lot of Bengali girls. The Bangladesh government didn't want to work with the Indian government, and essentially would take them to the border. They would take them to the border, and they'd run, and then often get caught again. So eventually, another organization I'd worked with for several years, Sunlap, they worked with a similar organization in Bangladesh to get the girls safely to their similar organization and be able to get them home. But sometimes we can't find families. The girls are too young. They can't give us enough information. We can't find their families. And so then their home is the rescue center until they grow up and either stay there as a teacher or go out in the world and become a jeweler, become a seamstress, do amazing things.
So then the housing costs that you need to pay the teachers, and now you've introduced yoga, so you have, and then I think you were mentioning before when we talked, there's the therapy aspect.
Yeah. So
all this costs money. And
absolutely.
So this is what you're working towards funding. Is there anything else that is involved or that you are looking to introduce there?
Well, there's always projects. You know, even if the government funds some of these rescue centers to a point, by the time the money gets there, there's so much money siphoned off. That's just how the government works in India. So, and then some of that money can only be used for certain things. So, like, they can't use certain money for the internet or for the phone bill or for the electricity. But, like, how do you run a place without those things? So then they have to look for funding and raise funding other places. Aloka, the organization I'm working with at this point now, is a visionary. She always knows what's needed. She always has plans. Like a friend of mine helped build a second story so that there could be more beds because there wasn't enough room for all the girls. Helped rebuild a kitchen. 1 year, the money I'd already funded enough for the yoga program, so that's when they started they found such benefits that they took it into the aftercare program. 1 year, they had enough money, so we then funded for playground. These are kids. They want to play. You know, how important is it for them to have joy? So we helped build, a playground. 1 year, we needed to build out a new space and just simple things like sheets and baby cribs and stuff because, some of these girls have been coming in pregnant. And so whatever is needed, she already has a plan. She already knows what's needed. And I trust her so much. She's amazing. And she knows if money comes in, where it's going to go. She knows where it's needed most. So there's always things to help the girls more, or things that need fixed or whatever, because the money that is offered there in India isn't enough. It's not enough, and they need help. They always need help. They do a lot of projects where they fund, themselves through the artists and crafts that they are working on there too. But as I shared with you when we talked at one point, like this yoga has become their therapy. Okay? So therapists, number one, are very expensive. Second, these girls are coming from very harsh situations that is a huge emotional toll to work with, even as a very trained therapist. That's a lot to take home with you every day. So there's been a high turnover, a high rate of, just expense. So these kids that very much need, what I would think very much need therapy, aren't getting that access. And yoga has helped them then connect back to their body You know, so many who haven't been connected to their body have a positive experience with their body, their breath, their mind, because they do the whole thing, the yoga poses, the breathing, the relaxation, the meditation. They're doing the whole parts of yoga, and you can see the benefits. I've been told over and over that, you know, they started with the older girls. They decided it was going so well for them. They started the younger girls, and everybody's taking yoga. You know, on the third year or whatever it was, we got yoga outfits for the girls because they were all doing yoga in dresses, you know, and feeling a little weird about that when you're doing shoulder stands and your feet are in the air, or down dog and your butt's in the air, and they're wearing dresses.
Yeah.
So, you know, we slowly developed the program and giving what it needs, but it seems to be doing wonderfully now. I think it's been 7 years. 7 years
And the
now.
teachers, the yoga teachers so they are like people who are traveling like you from elsewhere, and then also yoga teachers from India who are there?
She hired yoga teachers from India. She worked very hard to find the right fit. She had someone in mind and was really excited about it at the beginning, and it didn't quite work out, and she found another teacher. So she's very careful to make sure she's getting the best fit for these girls. She loves them so much.
That program is under this non-profit Village Cooperative, or it's something separate?
It's separate, but Village Cooperative has made relationships with them. Women's Link International is the in India, and she has the lady in Indianapolis has made relationship with Village Cooperative, with Aloka, who I keep talking about, who is so amazing, and just helping support in the ways that we can here from the U.S. Because getting money to India is nearly impossible. It is very, very, very difficult. I've worked on another board of directors of a nonprofit when I was helping fund schools and building of the school with the Swami I studied to be a Pujari with. He ran a school. So I was also funding and raising money for that for several years, and was on a nonprofit here in the U.S. and saw how incredibly difficult it is to get money to India, and for Indians to set up to get money from the U.S. For some reason, they don't want it to be easeful because they're worried about all the various tensions that could be funded that are still going on in India between many different religions and groups and all of that. So it's taken years and years to set up a nonprofit over there with the other group I was working with to be able to receive money from the U.S. And like I was doing all this fundraising, and I was going to set up a nonprofit, but realized there was no need because all the money I was raising was already being handled by these two nonprofits that I was working with, or on the board of directors of, and that was perfect. You know, I didn't need to do it too. I just was the one raising a lot of awareness, raising a lot of money. I've raised over $100,000 just on my little lonesome, just being motivated in the morning to wake up and make a difference in the world.
Goodness. Things cost a lot, but still in dollars. When you convert it to rupees, it is really helpful. It's a lot.
So fun.
Yeah. So what are the needs now? Of course, there's always the ongoing functioning of all of this, but are there certain current needs that are like very much need to be addressed right now? I know you had mentioned about therapy and the healing aspect since the girls have gone through traumatic experiences. So is trauma work a part of that?
And I mean, that's what yoga is addressing now, and they've started some like martial arts too, which I think is great and empowering, and you know, really lets out some of that frustration, but focus and meditative. So, you know, seeing these little girls in pink dresses about 10 years old doing martial arts, it's just amazing. She's like, you go, girl. So, you know, she's always innovating. This is the time of year I usually get in contact with her and see what she needs, because this is the time of year I usually do my personal fundraiser. Because since moving to the ashram, I'm not doing as much active fundraising as I did before I got here. Haven't been chanting and traveling as much, which was just going into full gear in March. I had all sorts of things booked. And then we kind of got into a pandemic, and I haven't been able to go anywhere. So this is the time of year I usually get in touch with her and say, what do you need? What can I do? And do my own fundraiser. So I don't know what is, there's always something. I mean, there's always something.
Yeah, and I'm sure, like, they might be open to new things, too.
Absolutely.
So has the pandemic affected the program at all?
A little bit. I mean, it's affected everybody, but they're pretty self-contained in many ways. So I don't think it's been as big of an issue. You know, the safety of the girls has been very important. I mean, a lot of them have been rescued, so they're kind of hiding away. You know, nobody knows these big rescue centers are there, or else, I mean, that'd be awful.
Have you been able to get to know these girls on an intimate level?
Strong, amazing, resilient girls and women, mostly, you know. Not always. Some you could see are going to be having a really hard time in life. You know, I don't like using the word broken, but that's the best I can come up with. And those girls are taken care of as long as they can be. And so you see the spectrum of human resilience, really, is what I've seen. And, you know, the teenage girls act like teenage girls. And the little kids act like little kids. And for me, it's just continued to bring myself gratitude for what I do have. You know, I can say, you know, I've had struggles in my life. I didn't have those struggles. It keeps perspective for me. It brings, you know, I have gratitude every day. And I haven't had the chance to, you know, get really close. I've only visited a few times. But in those few times, I did see, you know, some little girls turn into young women, and, you know, teenagers turn into young ladies, and go from quiet and closed off to confident in maybe their new craft, and finding themselves. I mean, I've been thoroughly inspired. I never was the person to ask for money. I'd never fundraised before, really. I'd never sold things before. That was just not my thing. And yet, for years, I'm out there selling their jewelry. You know, I keep doing all this fundraising because I not only believe it, but I see the benefits that it's had. And, you know, at one point, I had an opportunity to, you know, get a job that I could have just donated $20,000 a year to the cause and had that money there. But I didn't really want to do that because I felt like the education was important. You know, the education of letting people know that this is still happening, that this is real, that this is not just a story, that it's a lot of girls. It's a lot of girls. And my first trip, when I asked some of the girls at one of the rescue homes what they wanted me to do, what could I do when I went home? They didn't go home and say, oh, go raise money. You know, that's not their part of the thing. They said, tell our story. And I was just like, oh my God. They wanted to make sure people knew what was happening and what was happening to them. And that this was happening and that it wasn't okay. And so I've continued on with, thank you so much for like an opportunity like this to just share some of what's happening, and that it is real, and that these are real lives, and that there is hope, and that we can make a difference. So I've continued on a much harder path of going out there and raising the money in small amounts, but that's because I feel like it creates a community, it creates an energy of support, and I feel like they really do feel that. Even though, I haven't been doing as much as I was the last few years after moving to the ashram, there is still a community that every time I ask for help is still in, because they've been in for maybe 7 years. They've been following the cause and supporting the cause and knowing that they're making a difference in these situations.
And this is so necessary because the younger girls and teenagers you're working with, they were born into it. They were born in the red light district. It is so many people there. And there have been documentaries made also about, this area. This service that you're doing, it is absolutely necessary because they have no other avenue. How else will they get out of it?
Yeah.
And I'm sure the mothers, the adults have expressed their desires for their daughters to get out of this system.
Amazing experience. And, I grew up without a lot of means, lower middle class at best. When I went, being a white American and showing up to spend time with these girls, that in itself was power that I hadn't experienced before. Because to them it meant the world. They had been thrown away by society. Sometimes their families have now discarded them because of what they've been through. They've been sold. They've been sold over and over again. And to have somebody, from, their viewpoint of the world, from America, come and pay attention to them, that meant something to them. And it just blew my mind because I'd never been in that position before. I'd never been in that position of just my presence and my attention meant that much to somebody. And that's why I made an effort to come back, because I wanted to make sure that I didn't just show up once and leave. It has been a few years since I've been, and I really do want to get back at this point. But for them, it meant they were acknowledged, they were seen, they were heard, that they meant something. And that was not my intention at all. I didn't know I had that power. I didn't have the money to make the trip. For 3 years, I had to fund my trip there and fundraise for it. So I didn't think of myself as any powerful position at all. So that was a really powerful moment for me. I just want to say thank you so much for letting me share about these amazing souls that have touched so many lives and they don't even know it. And we are in such a position of power and privilege living here in the United States. We have no clue. And it just means the world to me to be able to share that we can make a difference and that these lives are being changed and made better in so many ways. So thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you for the amazing work that you're doing and for bringing awareness about this issue. If people are wanting to get involved or want more information, who should they contact?
The Village Experience, I will definitely give you links to them and their work. Or anybody feel free to contact me. I'm very easy to get a hold of, sometimes a little slow to get back to, but I do love to continue with this work. So please reach out.
Wonderful. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you, dear.
Om Shanti.
Om Shanti.